Welcome back, MTG Joe here. We're here for another installment of the weekly meta breakdown. This video in particular is for the best decks on the MTG Arena ladder for the week for standard best of 3. If you're looking for standard best of 1 or the other formats, explore Historic Alchemy, best of 1, best of 3. Separate videos that are in the playlist. As long as there's data available each week, we will look at each of the formats. Typically best of 1's always available, best of 3 depending on what's kind of the new sets coming in, volume of games, stuff like that, especially in the Eternal formats, might vary from week to week. We get all this data from Untapped.gg, what you see on the screen, companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks your win rates, loss rates, deck collection sync, in-game overlays, whole bunch of useful features, free to use a whole bunch of it. Link is in the video description down below. Click the link and get signed up, and then you can just click copy to MTGA, and then you get these premier decks in your client as quick as possible. I'll also paste all these deck lists in the video description if you just want to copy paste the old-fashioned way. In any case, jumping into it, this is July 17th to 24th is the week. Platinum to Mythic rank, 17,000 matches, so 34 to 51,000 games. It's best of 3, so matches at least 2 to 3 games on average, so somewhere in between that range. And the top performing deck of the week in best of 3, Boros Aggro. So second place deck this week in best of 1, but best deck in best of 3. Really the only difference between, well actually, we see the Reckless Stormseeker in here instead of the Sunrise Cavalier. It's an interesting inclusion. Usually you see Sunrise Cavalier, it just naturally has trample. It itself has haste. This allows your other creatures to come in with haste. It does let you have the day-night cycle going as well. Where Sunrise gets the benefit of the day-night cycle but doesn't necessarily trigger it. So that's an interesting kind of shift that we see in this. But the deck itself, what you're looking to do is basically play out a bunch of hasty creatures, make them bigger with stuff like Thundering Raiju, Luminarch Aspirant, or Kumano. You have Play with Fire, Roil Eruption, Brutal Cathar's kind of removal, Valorous Stance kind of removal as well. This version is also playing Angelfire Ignition in the main board. It's an important card, just allowing you to kind of race the creature mirrors, just gain a bunch of life, as well as give like trample and stuff like that to some of your other creatures. Still think I like the Sunrise Cavalier more just because it always has trample, but I would have to play some games to know for sure with the Stormseeker. At least from a budget constraint, you know, Sunrise is uncommon. The sideboard, usually what I do is just kind of indicate what matchups you usually want these cards for. So Kami's Flare is removal for creature matchups. That also takes advantage of the modified kind of sub-theme of this deck that allows you to then deal 2 damage to the face. Thalia is against any deck that's looking to play a bunch of spells, so we'll get to it like the Teamer Control deck, Jessica Hinata, any of the black-white kind of big mana decks, just taxing your opponent, trying to throw them off a turn. Similarly with Spellbinder, you want to pick off stuff like Vanishing Verse, Meathook Massacre, Doomscar, any kind of payoff kind of effect, or Sweeper. Angelfire is for the creature mirrors. Valorous Stance could be for Hinata, could be for heavy kind of sweeper decks as well if you want to protect, if you want to go on the protection side of things, or even like the mirror could be fairly relevant. And then you got Showdown of the Skalds. This is for grindier matchups where you're going to want the card advantage. 4 mana, draw 4 basically, and then get the added pump effects. We jump into Mono Green Stumpy. This is generally one of the decks that's better against Boros Aggro, but it's like marginal. It's like a 52-48 kind of split. Boros is usually pretty ahead on most of these matchups. So this deck here is really just taking advantage of the snow lands. You have Blizzard's Brawl as fights, Inscription as fight. You have Sculptor of Winter that helps you ramp into like Eska's Chariot and Uvenwald. You want to get your payoff with Invoke the Ancients as your top end card. You get to make copies of it with Eska's Chariot. Notably, keep in mind the wording on Invoke the Ancients. You create 2 tokens that are 4/5s, and then you put counters on them. The counters are not embedded to the tokens. So when you copy with Eska's Chariot, you just get 4/5. So keep that in mind when you are playing your games. Otherwise, you got like Mana Sinks and like Uvenwald Oddity, Werewolf Pack Leader, Ranger's Class. So there's a lot to do if you do Flood to just kind of pay mana into it. So your sideboard, you got like Bezeju versus any sort of artifact enchantment decks, just another way uncounterable. Froghemoth is good against like any sort of graveyard decks, just another hasty creature versus stuff like Control and stuff like that. Bankbusters for the grindy matchups. You have Outland Liberator and Mass Vandal is good against like the Rakdos Sacrifice kind of decks, the Anvil decks, and the Runes decks. or like any of sort of like the green-white enchantments. You have fight spells and Master's Rebuke and Devouring Tendrils for the creature mirrors, and then Snakeskin Veil for the heavy targeted removal matchups. We then go to Temur Control. So this is red-blue treasure deck that's playing green for Titan of Industry and Coma on the top end. So it's really just like a lot of early interaction, Voltage Surge, Fading Hope, Braid, some counter spells. You got Fable the Mirror Breaker to ideally copy your Goldspan or Titan, and then just kind of generate a bunch of mana, play Titan, be like, can you beat a 7/7, reach, trample, a whole bunch of text. Oh, in case, by the way, now I'm going to copy it with my Kiki. You also have like Hall of the Storm Giants in there. So this deck and the Hinata deck, very similar in terms of the concepts of what you're using your sideboard for. Other threats as relevant in certain matchups. Koma's not good in some matchups, Titan's not good in others, so you kind of bring it in like that. Similarly with the Hullbreaker Horror and the heavy counterspell matchups, you can get rid of your Titans and then kind of play these in. You have some removal like Sweeper, Battle Frost and Fire, Dragonfire, Voltage Surge, Frost Breath. You also have your counter spells when relevant, and then Bankbusters for the grindier matchups. We then jump into Orzhov Control, kind of Orzhov mid-range. So this version here is looking to take advantage of Extraction Specialist to get back stuff like Acquisitions Expert to make your opponent discard cards, or Luminarch Aspirant. You have a bunch of removal, kind of discard like Dreadfuge, stuff like that. Meathook Massacre, you got your Wedding Announcements, just a lot more discard in this particular one, like even Palaka Predation in there. So you're really playing like 19 real lands and then like 2, 4... I can't be, oh, 6, yeah. I'm like, that's 2 few lands. 23 is 2 few lands for this deck. You got some Planeswalkers on the top end. Henrika is just kind of the Kalidas of the format, kind of scattered into there. Then Hinata matchup, mono white matchup, just general creature removal. This is good against the Hinata matchup as well, or if you run into runes. You have Glow Blank for control matchup, Path of Peril for the aggro matchup, Soul Shatter for Goldspan or Hinata decks, and then your Legion Angels that are in the main board. We go to Jeskai Hinata. I feel like this deck, while having slightly lower win rates than some of the other decks, it's only like fractional. I think it's because this deck's generally a little bit harder to play. But most of like the showcases and big tournaments always have this deck towards the top. So with Hinata out, you basically reduce the cost of your target spells and tax your opponent. This means your 2 mana counter spells become 1 mana counter spells. It means your Magma Opus could cost as little as 2 mana. It's a very similar idea to the Temur deck, where you're just trying to generate a bunch of mana, Magma Opus your opponent, and just get, while interacting with their board, make copies of Goldspan and generally win through like Hinata, Magma Opus beats, or the Hall of the Storm Giant. Very similar to Temur as well, just more burn removal if needed, counters where needed, card advantage where needed, kind of mixed into there. And lastly on the docket, we have Esper midrange. So this is an Obscura special. So you have your Fiend, Scheming Seer is kind of your engine card. Gets rid of the wrong half problems. You got some counter spells mixed into here. This is basically the black-white deck that's using blue for some very powerful Esper cards, but also counter spells that help in the big mana like Izzet splash decks. But you're still like with Wandering Emperor, Obscura Interceptor's a tempo play, Wedding Announcement still in here, Meathook still in here, some powerful 2-drops in Tenacious Underdog and Luminarch Aspirant. Kaido really strong on the play. And very similar again, discard versus control, removal versus aggro, counters versus control-ish decks, like more removal, some Amirius attacks your opponent, Go Blank, Shadows Verdict. So just a good scattering of cards depending on each matchup. So you can pivot to more of a control deck, pivot to more of an interactive aggressive deck. You can be a more aggressive mid-range deck. There's a lot of options with this kind of shell. In any case, going to wrap this up. Let me know what you're playing in Standard Best of 3 if you're playing it. What cards are you most excited about to see rotated out even? Rotation is coming up in September. We're getting Dominaria United spoilers, but let me know in the comments. In any case, thanks for watching today. Hope you have a great one. Stay safe out there, and if you can, drop a like, comment, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. It's a free and easy way to help support, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.